Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tombstone Tourist. Today we're in rural Rappahannock County, Virginia, at the St. Paul's Episcopal Church Cemetery. St. Paul's Cemetery was once part of the St. Paul's Episcopal Church, which once stood here on these grounds, but in 1929 the church was destroyed by a tornado. But the cemetery survived and is still an active burying ground for the church members and their families. It's a well-kept cemetery, rather small. This area was also a very important part of the Civil War here in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, as evidenced by these historical markers. As I said, we're in the small community of Woodville, Virginia, which is a little community in Rappahannock County. It's about 25 miles east of Luray, Virginia, and about another 20 or 30 miles or so away from Culpeper, Virginia. There's a number of veterans buried in this cemetery. This gentleman served in World War II. And another World War II veteran, Philip Lee Thornton Jr., First Sergeant in the United States Army. Another U.S. Army Sergeant, James Brown. Just as I arrived, as usually happens, there was a gentleman that lives on the property next to the cemetery that fired up his lawnmower and is now mowing his yard. So we're going to have to put up with that. But he was kind enough to ask me if he wanted him to stop. But he's going to the other end of his yard, so it should be relatively quiet. There's two, maybe three graves that I wanted to do here in this cemetery. And the first one is right here. This is the grave of former United States Senator EUGENE McCARTHY. EUGENE McCARTHY was born on March 29, 1916 in Meeker County, Minnesota. And he went on to serve in the United States House of Representatives from 1949 to 1959, when he was elected to the United States Senate. Senator McCarthy served from 1959 until 1971. In 1968, he ran for the Democratic nomination for president against Lyndon Johnson. And he decided not to run for the Senate again in 1970. And once again, sought the Democratic nomination for president, but lost to eventual candidate Edmund Muskie. In 1976, he ran for president as an independent, but was again defeated. All total, Eugene McCarthy ran for president 5 times. In 1982, he decided to run for his old Senate seat, but lost in a landslide to Mark Dayton. In 1969, Senator McCarthy separated from his wife of 24 years, but they never divorced. It was rumored that Senator McCarthy was having a long-term affair with CBS News correspondent Myra McLaughlin. I don't know if we can draw any conclusions, but resting right next to Senator McCarthy is Myra McLaughlin. She died in 1998, and when Senator McCarthy died on December 10th, 2005, he was buried next to her here in Woodville, Virginia. After retiring from politics, Senator McCarthy stayed out of the public eye largely, spending his time writing and teaching an occasional class. As I said, Eugene McCarthy died on December 10th, 2005. He was 89 years old. Resting just a few feet away from Senator Eugene McCarthy is the grave of a longtime NBC News correspondent, Frank McGee. Frank McGee was born September 12, 1921 in Monroe, Louisiana, and he began his broadcast career at KGFF at Shawnee, Oklahoma, before moving to a larger station in Oklahoma City. In 1955, Frank McGee was sent to Montgomery, Alabama, where he served as the news director during the Civil Rights Movement. It was there that he gained national attention. While in Montgomery, McGee came to the attention of NBC News and offered him a position at their national office in New York City. In 1960, 64, and 68, he served as the floor correspondent for each of the national political conventions for NBC News. He, along with fellow correspondents John Chancellor, Edwin Newman, and Sandra Van Oker, was known as the Four Horsemen of NBC News. In 1960, he narrated the second debate between Richard Nixon and John Kennedy. On November 22, 1963, Ched Huntley, the NBC News anchor, broke the news that shots had been fired at the presidential motorcade in Dallas, Texas. Soon after, McGee appeared on the air with Ched Huntley and later with David Brinkley and began communicating by phone with NBC News correspondent Robert McNeil, who was on the ground in Dallas. It was during one of these phone calls that Frank McGee first reported for NBC News that President Kennedy had died. In a career that spanned more than 30 years, Frank McGee covered many important historical events for NBC News, including the Vietnam War and the assassinations of both Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. And he also narrated and covered a number of events related to the American space program and moon landing. In 1971, Frank McGee replaced Hugh Downs as the host of the popular NBC News show Today. In 1974, he was diagnosed with bone cancer, but still continued to work as host of the Today Show. Frank McGee's last appearance on the Today Show was April 11, 1974. He died 6 days later on April 17, 1974, at the age of 52. The inscription on Frank McGee's Burial stone simply says Frank McGee, September 12th, 1921 to April 17th, 1974. We know that the autumn does not begin with the turning of the leaves, but earlier, on some forgotten afternoon, when a shadow passes over the fields and it was no longer summer. Kind of a fitting epitaph on his tombstone, since I'm here on a very beautiful autumn day in Rappahannock County, Virginia. And with that, I think this is a good place to end this video. I hope you found my visit to St. Paul's Episcopal Church Cemetery, the final resting place of Senator Eugene McCARTHY, news correspondents Myra McLaughlin, Frank McGee, interesting. If you have, please give me a thumbs up below. If you're so inclined, please be sure to leave a comment. If you want to keep up with my future adventures, please be sure to ring that bell and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you down the road. So long, everyone.